So I think it's about time I stop using the overall saying of it couldn't get any more worse when it comes to Star Wars, because it absolutely can after watching episode 6, and I talked about this in my previous post, we'll talk more about it now, and how a lot of this also has to do with Amandla Stenberg going into full damage control mode over episode 6 and the remaining episodes of this season, and everything else related to that cringeworthy Qimir and Osha scene. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So, in the Acolyte episode 6, it is now official. We have skinny dipping in Star Wars, and to make it even worse, we have the exchange between two characters, Osha and Qimir. Qimir being the one that does such a thing in this episode. There's even a moment where Osha looks down as he goes out of the lake onto the land, and it's just so awkward, it's so creepy. I don't know what they were thinking, but it's not so shocking because, after all, this is coming from Leslye Headland, Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant, and yes, I have to say that many, many times to make it very clear of who she really was to everyone out there. Now, what's interesting about this has a lot to do with Amandla Stenberg defending the Acolyte like no tomorrow. They will say whatever they have to say to convince the general public that what they are doing is coming out from a genuine place of what they believe in, of what Star Wars needs to become, when in reality, guys, let's face it, this is all a part of their agenda. Whether it's related to DEI or destroying a brand and building it up from the ground again into something that is just so deranged. Now, what's interesting about this is with Amandla Stenberg, who plays both May and Osha, desperately defending the Acolyte, she recently went into more damage control over the series, where she delivered the following regarding the Acolyte episode 6. I just think fans are going to take things out of context with the latest episode, and we do very human things in this one that haven't been done in Star Wars before. I wonder what she's talking about there or alluding to there. I think that we all know. This was Leslie's idea to really capture something different for Qimir. She really wanted to strip apart the meaning of what it means to be good or bad. I think for far too long we attached the Star Wars world to serving as a narrative to who is evil and who is good, and with episode 6 we really wanted to take those ideas away as characters that are just misunderstood. I believe there are going to be loud, one-sided fans that won't understand what Leslye and I were going for with Qimir in this episode. Fans just seem to be obsessed with one maker of one franchise, and George is not the answer to everything. Leslye really looked at that at The Last Jedi and Ryan, and what he did with that film, and how she could apply that to this story. And I think you are going to just have to deal with the same minority of fans that label this series holding some kind of an agenda which is just a complete lie. Like Leslye said earlier, I don't think fans even know what agenda even means at this point. They like to use many slang words for that, and it's just childish behavior at the very end. It was about time that we apply aspects of the real world in Star Wars, and starting off with episode 6, we explored that, and I don't want to give it away, but I expect many delicate and frightened fans to have an issue with that going into it. We explore similar pieces what was done in episode 6 in both 7 and 8, and you can expect a loud, opinionated fan base to have the same repetitive response. It's just something as an actress working with such a talented showrunner that you have to filter out of your mind for a while because they aren't fans at all. You do things in episode 6, and I'm sure you are going to bother, of course, they are going to bother some that just don't get Star Wars, period, but you have to understand this franchise now is all about adapting to the modern world and the modern way of thinking. Leslye really wanted to incorporate familiar things we do in our everyday lives on Earth, and how we could implement that in the rest of the series. So, guys, let me just stop here for a moment. So, in episode 6, I mean, like I said earlier, you have that cringeworthy scene. You even have a moment where May resets the pip droid like she's resetting a phone to factory settings. There's just little things in here that seem way too familiar, and I think that's what she's alluding to here. Not only what we saw with Qimir, but also with things like that, and other elements, as she puts it, that they are shoehorning into the Acolyte. That's why it feels so disjointed. It feels all out of touch with George Lucas's vision, and yeah, look, at the end of the day, we all know that they're very overconfident with the show, because she goes on to talk about 7 and 8. Let's get into this. So, I think the saber fights that we have coming up for 7 and 8, she says, are going to outperform what fans saw in the prequels easily. I mean, what we did in episode 5 was done by Leslie out of pure inspiration at the top. Duel of the Fates. And she did it well above that. Fans need to understand that in order to reach new fans, you have to incorporate elements from other popular films into the Star Wars world to make it familiar to the majority of the public catching up on this series, and they just seem to be afraid of powerful female roles. I think episode 6 was one of the most transformative experiences for this franchise yet, and redefines what it means to be good or bad, either as a Jedi or a Darksider. And you know what? She literally admits it right there. This literally was the very episode in which they want you to feel for the evil person, or to feel for the villain, or to take them in a different way. So as we saw, Qimir talks about, the dark side. It talks about feelings like the fear of, loss, the feelings of that were explained by Anakin Skywalker and Yoda in the prequels are basically repeated in the Acolyte, and how basically Osha says that's the dark side, and he goes, semantics. So they're really trying to make you, kind of detach yourself from what it means to be good or evil in this series, and it doesn't work. Because now you're looking at all these characters. Alright, who's good, who's bad? Alright, what are their motives? What's going on here? We all saw what's going on with Sol. We all saw what's going on with May, who went from bad to good, to bad to good, and repeat that again. Going back and forth, flip-flopping, and now you have Osha, who seemingly is falling into Qimir's philosophy. So there's a lot of wasted time of these characters flip-flopping. You don't know who's where, you don't really know what side they're on, and I think at the end of the day, what they're trying to do, as Leslie and Amandla have hinted and have teased multiple times now, is that they want to take away the concept of the Jedi and the Sith in terms of how they are actually presented in pop culture. And I think as well, when you look at the Acolyte as a series, we all know that Leslye Headland talked about how she really went into this, looking up to The Last Jedi, looking up to Rian Johnson, subverting expectations, doing bold things, and it doesn't work. When you try to do things like that, it doesn't work for Star Wars. Did she not learn what happened with Rian Johnson with The Last Jedi? Did she not learn about his new Star Wars trilogy that is, quote-unquote, on the back burner, according to Kathleen Kennedy, when in reality, yes, it is not happening. We talked about what Bob Chapek and Bob Iger did to that trilogy. We'll talk more about it later. But, interestingly enough, yet again, between the cringeworthy scene and nothing really happening in this episode, and the constant motive to diminish the meaning of Sith and Jedi, or good versus evil, is just devaluing Star Wars even further. So I would like to hear what everyone has to say about all this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.